If I may, and you know what? I may. I always may. I have every right to may. So I shall. I have a Constitution of the United States right here, and on this very channel, I read the whole thing. Cover to cover. Just to prove that I have done so before. And that if I were to take an oath to defend this, it's a serious one. That I mean it. That I know what this says. That I've read the whole thing. So, let's have a look in here, shall we? I have the unamended part here with Articles 1 through 5. There's just 5, right? Oh, actually, there are 7. Articles 1 through 7. Yeah, I misspoke. But no matter. I have it. I have the Constitution, the part that wasn't amended. And here, I have the amendments. It has the preamble to the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments. And then the rest, it has it listed in this subset under this own section. This is from the Constitution, the National Constitution Center. So let's have a look here. Amendment 14, right here, Amendment 14, Section 3. That's what's in the news right now. And here's what it says. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath, as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. This was passed in 1866, June 13th, and ratified in 1868, July 9th. It is one of the Reconstruction Amendments. It immediately follows the constitutional ban on slavery for anyone not convicted of a crime, and it prevents Donald John Trump from ever being president again, or having any government position whatsoever. It prevents anyone who tried to overthrow the U.S. government and the Constitution from holding power in America. Unfortunately, there is no formal way to enforce this, and it is assumed that it would be self-enforcing. that if you were to see an insurrection, such as an attack on the United States Capitol, which Trump did, and did so based on a lie he made up that the election was stolen from him, when his actions make it very clear that it wasn't, and so did the results, that he had been given so much time and so many resources to prove, but didn't. It wasn't stolen from him. It is strongly implied that we, the people, would have, at this point, enough knowledge of the Constitution to pressure its enforcement. But unfortunately, the media tripped up on this. And I know why. We all know why. The media loves having conflict. It loves having people shouting at each other. It loves the kind of confirmation bias that keeps us tuning in to channels such as Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, or looking at biased articles on sites like Huffington Post or Breitbart. It has been made very clear by the second founding fathers, the radical Republicans, from after the Civil War, the ones that passed this amendment to begin with, that you can't do something like January 6, 2021. You can't say to a crowd, we are going to go to the Capitol and have them do your bidding, or attempt to, and run for public office again. And yes, that does include the president. As this amendment was being passed, there have been notes passed from its passage as it was happening that the framers of this amendment clearly intended it to also apply to the president. And Colorado did what they needed to do, what they are required to do, what is their job, and enforced this provision in the absence of public knowledge. Like, the 14th Amendment was only really an academic discussion in the background until just now. Now, people are way more familiar with it because Donald Trump is completely disqualified. In the election next year, he will have 0 electoral college votes because he will not be on the ballot. That is the only way to interpret this provision from America's supreme law of the land, the Constitution of the United States, which is above the Supreme Court, which it is their job to interpret. It is above Trump. The case that is going to make its way to the Supreme Court will have its own title. It'll have something like Free Speech for the People v. Trump or something like that, but the real gist of it will be the United States Constitution v. Donald Trump. That is the choice that the Supreme Court justices will have to make. And if the Supreme Court has any legitimacy whatsoever, it will rule against Trump and for the Constitution. It will keep him off the ballot. They will keep him from running for office ever again, anywhere in America. Not just because that's what he deserves, but that's what the Constitution says. And no amount of hacking the dictionary is going to change that. And I know that Alito and Thomas are going to try that anyway. They need to do their pro quo to get the quid from their wealthy bribers, some of whom are foreign enemies. And I encourage them to keep doing that. Because any judge who rules in favor of Trump over the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, the supreme law of the land, will have officially signed their resignation. If the Supreme Court rules against this, they're illegitimate. Any judge that thinks Trump is allowed to run for election ever again, or anyone in an elected or appointed position of power who says that, is completely disqualified. They don't have any power. They shouldn't be treated like they have any power, because constitutionally, they do not. So, what should the first three words of this document, what should we the people do in this time? What should we the people do to save America from a real estate mogul and his political party that wants to destroy it? Well, our expectations should be that the Supreme Court will rule against Trump. And if any of the justices disagree with the 14th Amendment, Section 3, they're done. I don't have to respect their opinions anymore. And states can safely ignore those justices' opinions as well. And when I said all judges should rule against Trump, I do mean all of them. I know that Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota had a very big celebration on the historic day that a new Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court took office, a black woman, but because of the cowardice of that very same court, I say to this man who has sworn an oath not just one time, but for 3 different positions, one of which was the military, well, because of their cowardice, in stark contrast to Colorado's bravery, you're going to have to appoint an entirely new Minnesota Supreme Court. I'm sorry. If you want to defend this, you're going to have to start the whole thing from scratch. You're going to have to make that ceremony meaningless. And yes, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, does also apply to the Supreme Court of the United States. Not only is Donald Trump an officer of the Constitution, swearing an oath to it, so is the Supreme Court, and anyone violating that oath, which Trump clearly did, and emphasized even further afterwards when he said several times, "I'm going to terminate the Constitution." Yeah, no, he cannot be president anymore. And, furthermore, if the Supreme Court decides to go rogue again, I expect Joe Biden to take matters into his own hands. he absolutely will have the authority to say, if Thomas and Alito or anyone else rules in favor of Trump on this, that, yeah, you're fired. I don't even have to impeach you. I swore an oath to this. I'm going to enforce the Constitution, even if you will not. And the Senate will be appointing your replacements now. Will this make a lot of Republicans mad? I don't care. And this doesn't either. That's our role as Americans right now. That's our role as a public. To make sure. And we, the people, have to go out of our way to make sure of that. America, as always, is worth more than Donald Trump and deserves better than him.